All right, by my clock, I've got 3:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to first say thank you for joining us today for the Learning Technology Center EdTech webinar series. My name is Brian Bates. I'm the Digital Learning Coordinator for the LTC. And joining us today on the webinar is Chris Wherley from the LTC. And he's coming today to talk a little bit about the Google Admin Console. So Chris, if you're ready, go ahead and take over the screen and you can get yourself started.
Sounds good, Brian. Thanks.
No problem.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday webinar with the LTC. Just a little background on me. Started with Google Admin Console probably 6 or 7 years ago when we transitioned our email from a Linux box to hosted ourselves to going to Google email, and haven't looked back since. So it's been a good experience, and hopefully we can share some things with you today that will help you, may confuse you, may open your eyes to something else that maybe you didn't know about. So as we get started, I'll share that bit.ly with you again at the end, but that is the slide deck that I'm sharing today. And also just a little bit about the environment in Zoom. There should be a question and answer area in the bottom of your Zoom window that you can ask questions, and we'll get to those at the end of the webinar. So again, my name is Chris Wherley. I'm the Network and Technology Services Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center. It started in June and starting to figure things out as far as my day-to-day, but also learning a lot as I go. Feel free to reach out to me at my email, cwherley@ltcillinois.org, with any questions or anything related to technology. So we'll be able to do that. And just one last note about the webinar series. You may get something out of today, you may not, but there are other webinars that will be available, and those are at ltcillinois.org/webinars. We're going to do one tech related later in, I think, November for data security. And Mindy does her tech related ones about E-rate at least once a month. And then we've got other things with augmented reality and coding in the classroom and some other things. So check those out, register for those, and then also you can view the archived ones as well. So let's look at the admin Google console. The easiest way to get there is through admin.google.com. There are some other ways to get there. If you use your main email for your super admin, you can get to it in the little gear over on the right hand side of your email, but I usually just set up a shortcut bookmark for admin.google.com, and that allows me to get to this screen that you see here. And if you don't see all these icons down at the bottom, and I should have made a screenshot for this, there's a place that says more controls, and you can drag all these icons up, and so these should be all that are available to you, but that's under more controls, and if you drag those up into this area, you can find them. I'm going to really focus on these 8 areas. There are more areas. I'm not going to cover users, just mainly because it was difficult to do screenshots in that area just because of people's names and stuff like that. But everything else here that I'm showing you, there's really no personal information or anything like that that I was afraid to screenshot. So as far as getting around in here, you can click on the icons that you see, support, security. You can also use the hamburger method menu up in the upper left-hand corner, but you can also just search for things that you want to know more about, or just to see if there's settings within your Google admin console to see if there's a setting for that. So I just typed in two-factor into that, and it auto completes. So you can start off with very short 3 letters and start to see auto completion take place, and it'll help you get to areas within your Google admin console that you're trying to get to without trying to weave yourself in and out of the menus. The other way is through the little, what I call the hamburger menu, but other people may have a better name for it. But you can just hover over directory and you'll see different options for users and groups and organizational units and buildings and resources. 3 of those are actual icons on the main screen when you first log in. Same thing with devices. If you go to device management, these are the areas that you'll be able to get to. So let's look at support. Support is a place where you're going to go to get your questions answered. These are specific issues that you may go to Google about that you think are bigger than just your school. Maybe it's bigger than support that you're getting from email lists and other things. And it may be such a thing as a particular user. You're trying to figure out if their username's not updating or something like that. You can contact support. So a couple different ways to do that. Again, use the question mark that's in the main bar across the top, or click on the support button. Obviously, again, there's some recommended content, so they know you're going to help. These are their most popular items as far as things that you may need help with. You can click on contact support, and I've heard good things about the chat. That method seems to work when communicating. Also email, but you can always go back to the days of the telephone as well. The security area. Again, it's not something that you're doing day to day that you would go to this area, but it's an important area that I think you should at least explore. We're just going to look inside the basic settings area, but there's also password monitoring. It'll actually show you a graph of whose password is a certain length and whether or not it's a strong password or not. So it's kind of got pretty colors and stuff like that you can look at. But if you look at basic settings, again, this is you can set a minimum length of a password. You can also set up other people that aren't admin users to do password recovery, resetting passwords. So this is an area where you can do that. And then it also talks about two-step verification. So in my new role as for the LTC, I've done a lot of stuff with cybersecurity, attending webinars, just reading through some stuff. And there's a lot of positive things coming out about using two-step verification. Obviously, in a school, it's difficult to maybe do that, but it is something that you want to check out and learn more about. And especially with phishing being the issue that it is, at least if a administrator or teacher gives away their username and password, at least with the two-step verification, the person wouldn't necessarily be able to get into their system. However, if they use the same email and password in other applications, then the two-step verification doesn't necessarily work. So, but we won't go there on this webinar. So basic settings is a place where you can look, and then obviously the use of the question mark on the screen. For example, under two-step verification, the question marks, you'll see those on a regular basis throughout the admin console. And if you click on those, they definitely give you more information than you would ever want to know. So the company profile, again, this is a place that I probably went into maybe 7 years ago when I first started working with Google, and hadn't been back in this area since. But if you look in the company profile, you'll see things like the company name, how it's listed. So maybe at the beginning when I first started, the school's name wasn't specifically the right way, so I could go back and change that. Also, you can, if you've changed your logo or something, you want to update that, you can personalize that in this area. And then there's also a place for communication preferences where you can select to receive emails for different things, feature announcements, feedback and testing, and other things. So I'd encourage you to look around in company profile. Admin roles, again, in under account, but this is also a place on the main screen. When you first go into the admin console, there's an admin roles. And basically, this is probably more for a school district that has more than a small team. A small team, in my case, when I was in a school district, it was a K-12 district, about 1,500 students, and we had about 700 Chromebooks. I was the only super admin. So it didn't make sense to also make myself a group admin or anything like that. But if you're in a bigger tech team, you don't want to give everybody super admin just because they don't necessarily need it. And that's, again, one of those things that's come up in some of my webinars and stuff that I've attended, just talking about just giving people enough privileges to do what they need to do, not necessarily giving them the super administrative functionality. So those are the system roles that are available to you. Again, if you click on the question mark, you'll see information about the pre-built administrative roles, so you can read more about that. And if you on that screen, you'll also see the privileges that are associated with those roles. And again, if you click on the question mark, it'll show you what each one of those little checkboxes means and what information you can add or subtract from users and create your own user-created role. So maybe you want somebody to do something specific, you can set that up within the user created roles and basically create your own system administrators. Rules, I think this is a relatively new area, and I don't have any experience with this, but I just wanted to kind of explore this and give you a heads up on that it's there. And I think this will be something that'll be used in the future. In probably a bigger way than what we all want it to be. But it's just a way of keeping track of your information, not letting it get out of your system, because it's pretty easy to share Google Docs. You can see that there's templates here for preventing the sharing of personal identifiable information. And then also preventing sharing of credit card numbers. Those would be two that you could start with and just turn those on and see if it had any effect on your network. And you don't really know until you try. But it basically creates a way for you to keep that stuff inside Google Drive and not let it be shared out. The reports, again, this is an area where maybe you're getting ready for a board meeting or you're meeting with your superintendent. This is a way to just gather some numbers. Maybe it's with teachers, just talking about how Google is being used. The first thing you come into, the highlights, the very first graph shows you who's using Gmail, who's using Drive, who's using Calendar, and Google Plus, and maybe you don't think you have any Google Plus users, or maybe you just want an idea of who's using Google Classroom. So those are ways of doing that. Some of the other reports, you can look at account activity, app usage by user. The audit area will show you admin changes that you've made to your system. It can show you logins. It can show you if calendars have been created, who's changed privileges, those types of things. And then down at the bottom in the lower right hand, or actually be in the lower left hand corner of your screen, because I cut and pasted this into the slide, but is manage alerts. And if you look at manage alerts, basically what it is a list of, it's a list of columns that have predefined alerts. And so the example I'm showing here is drive settings that have been changed. And the email recipients by default are super administrators. That can be customized so that if you want a specific user to receive those, you can do that. And then you basically toggle on and off the status to create emails. So these are all of the predefined alerts. You can see when users are deleted. You can see when a user's been suspended. You will get an email when a user's password has been changed, whether they change it or whether it's changed by an administrator. And following the idea that you're turning these on, I would recommend that you create Google filters as these start coming in so that they go into a label or folder so that they don't take up your inbox. But I think it's good that you then could search your Gmail as an easy way of finding out what things have been done. The apps outage alert is one that I used on a regular basis. It wasn't always as fast as Tech Geeks or other LTC email lists, but it usually caught up eventually and let us know that there was an apps outage and verified that we weren't all just going crazy. And the one that I'm very interested in, and it's probably there for a specific reason, is the government-backed attack warning. So I'm not sure what that is, but it's there. It must be there for a reason. So the apps area, this is where you would use Gmail or set up the apps for who you want using them. So your core apps would be your Gmail, your calendar, your Drive, Classroom. And when we get to this point, this is the first time I'm going to mention it, and it's really probably one of those things that we could do a whole webinar on, and maybe it should have been the very first webinar. As far as a technology webinar would be your organizational units and how you set those up and what they mean to you when you get into the Google Admin Console. But mainly, there's going to be settings for Chromebooks, Chrome devices, and there's going to be settings for users. And depending on how you have your organizational units set up, you just want to make sure that the settings that you're providing are for the right entity, whether it be for your devices or whether it be for your users. So in this case, apps, we're going to assign those to users. Most of the time, most of these things you can turn on at the very top level, and they'll propagate down through all your other levels. So an example might be Gmail. You might turn that on at the top level so it gets to teachers and staff and high school students, and then you may go into students in third grade or grade 3 and turn off email because you don't want that at that level. Or at the elementary school, you turn off Gmail. So that would be an example of why you would be in the apps area. So device management, and I get confused in this area, and I'm not sure it is device management, but there's so much more in here than just devices. And I think the right terminology is Chrome management. And we're going to manage Chrome, not just Chrome devices, but also the Chrome browser. So we're going to actually go into this area. Another thing I wanted to highlight was that icon that's got the Chrome logo, and then also the 1,000+ Chrome devices. We're going to see that in a little bit, and I just wanted to point that out to you that that's there, and I'll tell you later where that is applicable. But so we got about 10 minutes. We're doing good. We're running. So Chrome management. So within Chrome management, you're going to have different things that you can set up and assign settings. And the first one we're going to look at is user settings. So user settings, and if you look at what it says there, it says manage user-based settings on Chrome browser and Chrome devices. So if a student goes home or a teacher goes home, they will get whatever settings you've put into their user settings. So an example might be an avatar or a wallpaper. There's also settings for web pages and stuff that automatically open. There's settings for apps and extensions. So all that stuff is user-based. And so you want to make sure you're assigning that to a user-based organizational unit. And then we get into public sessions. Public sessions would be things like, an example that I had was at a grade level, they didn't want to use logins to get into their computers. They just wanted to go to a website for their grade level and then be taken to other websites. So what we did is we set up a public session that automatically opened up a specific website, and those settings are within these settings, and you assign that to the device OU. So it's a device setting, and then we come into device settings, and then we can assign that public session to that group of Chromebooks. So all the Chromebooks in certain carts would open that public session, automatically connect into a web browser inside the Chromebook, and open up that grade level website, and then they could point to Accelerated Reader or whatever other websites that they wanted to go to. This is also the place in device settings where you can set which version of Chrome OS that you want people to, or that you want your Chromebooks to update to. So right now, I think the latest is 69, or we're getting pretty close to 69. And so if you wanted to restrict it at 68, you would do that here. Another thing that is important is you can randomly scatter auto updates over a certain amount of days, so you can change those settings for specific devices. Another area where you'd want to, this is important, is when we get into the state testing and stuff like that, there was always a recommended Chrome OS. This is the area, the devices is the same place that you would have gone to if you would have clicked on that previous icon with the 1,000+ devices. And inside here, you would see your organizational units for your Chromebooks. And then if you searched within those organizational units, you would see the Chromebooks that you have assigned to those organizational units. This area you'll use at times for moving, like when you're first enrolling Chromebooks, you may be doing a cart-based system where you enroll them and then move them into a cart-based system. That might be one way you would use this. But I always use Chromebook Inventory add-on for Google Sheets. And then also I think there's one from Amplified IT that's called Gopher for Chromebooks. But basically you can mass edit user, location, notes, and even organizational unit, I believe. Again, reports, this is a subset of the reports that I showed you earlier, but just a little glance into Chromebooks over a 6-month period, going back to March. You can see when spring break was, you can see when summer was, you can see even a little bump there in July where probably Chromebooks were being enrolled, and so there was some activity going on there. So we rushed through that, we got through it. Here's some additional resources, because obviously, I couldn't tell you everything about Google Admin Console today. I would suggest that you join the G Suite for Education Admins Google Plus group. It's a community of other administrators, very active. I don't know how many emails I've gotten today, but I've got those filtered so that they're going away without me seeing every one of them, but I can go and look at them just like other listservs and stuff like that. They also have a podcast that I noticed wasn't updated since July. Hopefully that doesn't mean they're done doing it. Lots of good information there, lots of relevant information shared on a regular basis. Again, you can go to Google's training area, and they've got some on-demand videos. They've got helpful tips there as well. And then just feel free to reach out to the LTC. Reach out to me, C. Wherley at LTC Illinois. Reach out to your professional learning networks, whether that be something on Twitter, whether it be the G Suite for Education Google Plus community. It may be Tech Geeks. It may be the listservs that we have created through the LTC. So just explore, ask questions. You're not the only one that is using Google Admin Console. There's a lot of us out here using it, so feel free to ask those questions. Don't be afraid to ask. People have experienced the same things that you've experienced. So we did it with 4 minutes to spare.
All right. Thank you, Chris. I'm in the process of allowing anyone to ask a question if they have. So if there are any questions at this time, please feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead and ask.
Not everybody at once. Some other things that would be good things to reference, and as I just kept thinking about other things that could be added to this conversation. One would be GAM when you're dealing with, as far as other topics, other tools that you would use as a Google admin. GAM would be one of them. GADS, which is the Google Active Directory sync. The Google Active or the password sync is another one. Talking about Google Vault, again, those are all areas of Google admin that are on the list of things that we could talk about at some point. Everybody's running away since you turned on their microphones.
Just as a reminder that this recording will be sent out via email. Tomorrow you'll get an email with the link. I will also include in that email a link to the slide deck as well, if you didn't have a chance to write it down today. So you'll get that also. Before we leave here, I wanted to, Chris, I'm going to take back the screen from you here, if possible. There we go. I wanted to remind you of, Chris did an awesome job of showing or explaining the different webinars we have coming up. Some of these might be for you, some of these might be better passed on to others, but there's our next webinar will be next Tuesday with Lisa Ward, and she'll be talking about the Illinois Classrooms in Action teacher tech page, and then the one after that will be Mystery Skype with Mystery Skype Master Teacher Gina Ruffcorn. But you can go to the website LTC webinar or ltcillinois.org/webinars, and you can view the other webinars that we have available and sign up for as many as you want. And as Chris mentioned, there are archived webinars as well, so the things we've already seen. I'll go back one last time. Are there any questions from anyone? Go ahead and unmute yourself and feel free to ask. All right. With that, I guess we'll go ahead and wrap up. And again, thank you to Chris for the webinar, and thank you to everyone for joining. And you'll receive an evaluation via email shortly. So again, thanks
Thanks, everybody.